is kicking it off.
Oh, okay.
Is kicking it off. Again, we still have a number of people joining with us. If you are, thank you for signing on this evening. We're going to get started momentarily. We're just waiting another minute to kickstart our meeting to provide a full context to everybody who's with us. But we're so glad that you're with us. We'll start in just about a minute. Ralph, I'm going to go ahead and get us started unless you suggest otherwise.
I think we're ready to go. So
okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Richard Lemons. I'm the Executive Director of the Connecticut Center for School Change. We're a nonprofit that operates out of Hartford and works with numerous districts across the state and beyond. And we are absolutely honored to be in a partnership with the school district as the district begins to map out its future, begin to lay a path for the direction it wants to go and identify some clear priorities about what it needs to pursue in the coming year as part of a strategic planning process. I'm going to provide you an overview of what that strategic planning process looks like, and then we're going to invite our colleagues who are overseeing a facility study for the district. They're going to lead us through a process where they're going to be soliciting our input and feedback regarding what learning spaces could look like in the future of Norwalk. So without any further ado, I'm going to share my screen. And I just want to provide those of you who are not part of the strategic planning task force a sense of what we've been up to for the last several weeks and how tonight's experience links to that process that we are using. So back in the very end of the 2020 calendar year, Norwalk put out a request for proposals. The center was one of the entities that put in a response to that, and we were lucky enough to be awarded the bid. And we've been working thus far to kickstart a process where the district and the broader community come up with a framework of improvement to drive the work of the district in the coming years. And the process that we are using is to begin first with the needs assessment, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in detail. We're in the midst of that needs assessment now. And then at the point where we feel like we've got a good sense of what's happening in the current reality of the school district, and we have a good sense of the perspectives and priorities of all the various stakeholders, we will begin to think about creating those grounding artifacts that usually help tell the story of what a district is and what it stands for. These are documents such as vision statements and mission statements and core values. And then we will begin to articulate an improvement framework. And the purpose of this framework is to provide clarity and direction, and to energize the work of the district and the community to better serve all of the young people who attend school in Norwalk Public Schools. That improvement framework will have some broad goal areas, and then it's our sense that that will happen by the end of this academic year, and then in the time that follows that, we will begin to flesh out that improvement framework, and the district will, on an annual basis, look at where it's been, what progress it's made in an annual basis, and then identify the priorities for coming years. There are a number of people who are participating in this process. The board has been instrumental in shaping the direction and the scope of the strategic planning process. They're commissioning the task force that's doing the bulk of the work. They've created the parameters for how we're approaching the strategic planning, and they're ultimately going to receive recommendations from another group that I'll be talking about. And ultimately, considering those, revising those, editing, it'll be the Board of Education that ultimately adopts a strategic plan that can guide the work of the district. In addition to the board, and per the direction of the board and the administration, there's a task force that's been assembled. It's a task force that has various roles and perspectives and voices in it. And it's the job of the Connecticut Center for School Change to help facilitate this task force over the rest of the academic year, work within the parameters of the Board of Education, gather insight and perspectives of the broader community, and then ultimately craft some of the elements of the plan, the grounding artifacts and the improvement framework, and bring those back to the Board of Education. But the board and the administration have both been very clear that that's still not enough, that the superintendent and the board want many voices and many fingers helping to build this strategic plan. So we are trying to bring in a broader stakeholder group who will provide insight, provide input, will share their perspectives, and that work will inform the needs assessment that we're doing. It will also provide a feedback loop on any documents that we begin to develop. So I just want to talk a bit about the needs assessment part of this work, because it relates to what we've invited you to experience this evening. In our needs assessment, we're trying to look at a variety of sources of evidence, data, and perspective in order to have an authentic sense of what's happening in the district and what its assets are, as well as perhaps some areas of improvement that should be prioritized in the coming years. The task force did an initial SWOT analysis where it just surveyed the perspectives of people in the room. It is also, the task force has charged me with going out and gathering additional data. So I have facilitated numerous focus groups and led interviews with some stakeholder groups, especially inside the district thus far. We are also going to be building on and using the findings from a number of organizational reviews that have already been conducted or in the process of being conducted right now, and tonight's a part of one of those. And then we're also going to continue to have some broader stakeholder engagement. You'll note that there's a line going between analysis of various organizational review findings and broader stakeholder engagement. And that is there because most of the groups who have been contracted with by the school district to conduct studies, they have used stakeholder engagement as a way of understanding what's happening in the district. There is a study going on disproportionality of experiences and outcomes for young people inside the district with a real focus on equity. There has been an analysis of the organizational coherence and capacity of the organization. There is also a study going over the special education services. And there's also a study going on the current facilities and the needs of the organization in terms of school and classroom space. And all of those have used stakeholder engagement, and we're using all of those findings. Now, I say all this to contextualize what you're going to experience tonight. The team that is leading the facilities study is deeply invested in bringing in the voice of the community as it begins to lay out what the needs are, as well as envision what facilities could look like to better serve young people. And they have a number of collaborative exercises that they're engaging people in order to gather perspective. And tonight's one of these collab experiences. And we're going to be handing the meeting over to our colleagues in just one second, but I noticed that the superintendent has been able to pop back on, and I'm going to ask if Dr. Estrella wants to share a few words before we hand it off to the facilities study team.
So good evening, everyone. I'm sorry I had to deal with a little matter that I needed to resolve earlier. But in the context of the facilities work, I'm really delighted with the team that we have working on this piece with us, because one of the things that I'm hoping we can accomplish through this study is not only thinking about or looking at the components of the infrastructure or the mechanisms of operating a building, but also keeping in mind and looking at the components that make teaching and learning successful in a school environment. So one of the things that you will see tonight is kind of the thinking around the vision that facilities and environment matter in order for us to achieve the ultimate instructional model and goal around how we educate our students. So part of the work that I'm hoping you'll see unravel tonight is the elements of looking at our structures and how do we evolve our structures to match the theme and focus of the work that our schools are doing. So one of the things that I noticed this team doing really well is that when they're visiting the schools, talking to principals, students, and other faculty in the building, is really understanding and having a comprehensive look at what is the learning style and model for the school, and is the facility or environment meeting those needs? Also thinking about how do we as an organization continue to evolve to align ourselves to the demands of the new workplace, and think about in a visionary way how we need to shift the infrastructure in our buildings within the next 5 to 10 years to align to what schools need to become as a result of the changing environment in the workplace, right? Because our task is to educate our students to be successful in college and beyond. And when we think about that, we have to think about what is the demand of the workplace, and how do we design an environment in the classroom that equips our students to be successful in these new environments. So a lot of the work that you will see unraveling tonight, or the discussion, is going to lend itself to provide the team data that will help them better understand what are some of the shifts that we need to make as an organization to equip ourselves to the shifting demands that our students are going to be confronted with in order to achieve their goals. So with that, I'll turn it over to the team to kind of walk you through this learning experience and process.
So one last little thing I will say is Norwalk Public Schools and the board in their wisdom were smart enough to pull together the best of both worlds, national leaders as well as folks who understand facilities in a local way and have their feet in Connecticut and in Norwalk. So we've got the DLR group who have a national scope, and Newman Architects, and they're working as an integrated team. And with that, I'm going to hand it to Pam Lefferman.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Richard. Welcome everyone tonight. This is really very, very exciting. And so there's going to be really 3 parts to this conversation. The first 2 parts, I'm going to quickly run through kind of the schedule and the scope of what we're doing. And then we're going to look at, as part of that conversation, kind of how we look at buildings as enablers of your educational vision. And then the second part, we'll take you on some virtual tours of some projects that we're doing across the country. And they just represent, if you will, different North Stars, if you will, different districts' takes on what their priority are. And sometimes even within a district, obviously with a conversation of school choice, a school can be different so that it's really representing that school and those students' choice. So these are not necessarily, if you will, what you should do, but they represent the conversations that should go into, if you will, school design. And you can say, but we've got a lot of schools already, but they're always changing and morphing because of that changing educational vision. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. And then we're going to break into groups of about 10. And for those of you that are Spanish speakers, please let us know. We do have translators that will be in the group. And we're going to look at some words and some images and ask you a couple questions, because at the end of the day, Norwalk Public Schools is your district, and any of these conversations really need to include all of the stakeholders, if you will, opinions, reactions, desires, priorities, and everything else. So let's see, I think if I start sharing.
So Pam, before you do though, just the logistics on that Spanish piece, because I'm going to start organizing breakout rooms in the back end while you're doing a presentation. If anybody that would like to be in a Spanish breakout room could just raise your hand as a participant so that I know to flag you in that room. Okay, so seeing none, I guess we're going,
Hey, Ralph.
Yes.
It might be good to make that request in Spanish because they wouldn't know to raise their hand if you asked them to do so in English.
There's a translation going on right now in the back end. Great. So I'm sorry.
So Ralph, I can pause about halfway through the presentation and then we can ask that question again, because I think a lot of people are joining.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. All right, great. So as I said, the world's a different world than it was when you and I were in school. And I think the exciting part is there really is the possibility of teaching and engaging every student in their success. And so that's really what this is all about. And I think a lot of times people think of architecture as bricks and mortar, and that it's not necessarily part of that component that helps engage students, teachers, and community. And so we were very, very excited when Norwalk Public School District chose Newman Architects and DLR Group to be part of this study. Because we do believe that while bricks and mortar are an important investment, that they are constantly changing, and that one needs to make sure that one is looking at how they're supporting sustainability and resilience, that there's effective building management, that it aligns with how the teachers and how want to teach, what the district priorities are. And that really forms, if you will, that center circle, those three circles that also, along with safety and security, kind of center on equity. And then as you move out, you really start to look at how are these schools really the nexus of community? How do they bring community together? How do they ignite passions and excitement? And certainly, how do they act as a center of community? While COVID has been an incredibly challenging time, I think the fact of the matter is they've really emphasized how important schools are as the center of the community. So our approach is really data-driven, research-informed, and community-inspired. And I'm just going to take a second talking about research-informed because it's important. So DLR Group has done some major primary research that really links, if you will, buildings with engagement. Why is that important? Well, if students and teachers are more engaged, there are going to be better outcomes, right? So you can't say a better building makes better outcomes, but you can say a better building enables better engagement. So that's really the focus of this study that we're going through. Just very quickly, we were hired in January. Richard, kind of like you, ready, set, launch, right? So since that time, we have walked all but 2 of the 20 odd schools. The snowstorm was a little bit challenging, but NPS was fantastic helping us get into all the places and spaces. And we've talked to many of the principals, and we've actually had, if you will, 2 of our collabs already. And collabs is really just a fancy name for, getting together and talking, right? Getting together with stakeholders. So Marilyn, wave your hand. Marilyn actually led the collab for a vision for inquiry-based learning with the educators to really talk about, what are changing norms and what is, if you will, that vision of education that will absolutely be an important component of what Richard is doing, right? We then had a second collab that was context and culture, and it really focused on a day in the life. And so in this case, it was, if you will, teachers and principals' perspective on a day in the life of the student. And we're looking forward to inviting students to have that same exercise, and we'll see if they have the same opinion. My guess is maybe a little different than the principals and teachers. And then tonight is really that conversation of tours and benchmarks. So let me start first by saying, as part of that research and engagement, there really is that conversation around the physical equity. Are all buildings warm, safe, and dry? Are there leaks? Are the mechanical systems working? Are the lights working? And so we are doing, with Newman Architects, a physical assessment that updates all of those components that are really part of the building stuff. Then DLR Group is leading an exercise that's really looking at how is that building really acting to support education. And you can see on the screen, these 10 items are those items that from our research, we said really help foster, if you will, engagement of both students and teachers, because an engaged teacher is a better teacher, just like an engaged student is a better student. So I'm going to quickly talk through these 10. So that when we go on the items, 10 items. So when we go on our tours, and I say, this is what I see through these lenses, then when we break out on our tour into our little groups, you can say, well, thanks, Pam, but this is what I see. Because at the end of the day, that's really what's important. So certainly the conversation around school as a community resource, right? I think we all are looking forward to the day when we can gather together and see our sons and daughters in a play, see the marching bands, see all sorts of wonderful activities, sports, see, I don't know, poetry jam. That's a very important component. And in today's world, making that community resource available 24/7 in a safe way is an important component. So stimulating architecture, learning is inspiring. I've got to say, I was born in the Virgin Islands. And so when I walked into Columbus Magnet, oh my God, that repainting job with all those wonderful colors just made me feel happy. I was inspired. The color and light and displays were phenomenal. So stimulating architecture is important. But with all of your different schools, there, obviously choice is important as well as part of that conversation. How is a building safe and secure? How do you allow it to be open off hours and still be safe? How do you allow it to be safe during the day? And I think safety and security is also, it's not just those devices and the locks on the front door. How does it really provide students with that social and emotional resilience and seeing their friends, their teachers, and feeling safe and comfortable, because that really allows them to open up and connect. So that brings us to innovative learning environments that connect. When you see what's going on in learning studios, and you see someone doing something, you go, oh, I want to do that, right? That's what teaching and learning is all about. Flexibility, certainly in I was going to say yesterday's education, but I've got to say, Dr. Australia, you still have some of these chairs and tables. They're not as flexible as I think some people would like to see in terms of being able to do different activities throughout the day. The other conversation is adaptability starts in the systems. Obviously, you can have the biggest effect when you're doing a new building, but what are the walls that are 5-year walls or 10-year walls? What are the walls that are 20-year walls that are kind of around elevators and elevator shafts and mechanical systems? How do you make sure that a building is future-proof? The next thing is thermal, visual, and acoustical comfort. In our studies, we found if you're hot or cold, you just can't pay attention. So that's in some ways one of the biggest priorities, So all my engineering friends tease me because they go, well, what do you mean that's the most important? You're an architect. But if you're hot or cold, you can't pay attention. And then more and more, there's a focus on energy efficiency. We all know if as a district, you're spending a lot of dollars on energy, that can't go into the classroom for better teaching and learning. So that's something that we're also looking at. Easy to operate. We want to make sure that buildings are not just fancy systems that engineers have fallen in love with, but they're easy to operate. Because if they're not easy to operate, they're not necessarily maintained. And then the last topic is really around healthy learning environments. Certainly conversations around COVID and indoor air quality are, at the forefront of what we think and talk about every day. But what about nutrition? What about active spaces? What about behavior? What about equity? These are all things that are really part of an overall healthy environment. So very quickly, those are the 10 things that as we go through our virtual tours, think about how those different factors are really incorporated into these building designs. And so with that, Ralph, I'll pause a second so you can ask your questions about breakout groups.
Thank you. So if anybody in the room right now is interested in going into a Spanish breakout group when you're planning on, when we do break up, can you raise your hand? And raise it on in the application, sorry.
What was that question?
If anybody is interested in going into a Spanish breakout room when we break up, I'm trying to cohort them all together in the right breakout room, but it looks like everybody's in place to have the breakout rooms all in English. So thank you.
All right. Since I'm paused, any questions, any comments, or should I move into the tours?
I think we see one hand for Spanish.
We do have one hand, so you're correct. So after, and I'll make sure that but it will be it will end up being a one-person breakout room at the moment, but I'll work on that. Thank you.
There you go. All right. So let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 sites that we're going to tour. Some we're going to do a little quicker, and some we're going to have some of my colleagues chime in and talk about them a little bit more based on some of the research we've done. So the first one is Pathfinder Kindergarten Center. And so this was actually a very interesting project because it is, I think, 650, Marilyn, is that right?
Yes, you got it.
Wonderful little knee huggers that are at Pathfinder Kindergarten Center. I think the thing that is really interesting about this space is some of the research we did, but I think also when you look at these environments, you can see that it's really focused on activities and the ability for students to kind of move from activity to activity. And Marilyn, I'm going to steal your thunder because at the end of the day, this actually saved, what was it, 7 days of instructional time? Because the transition times, the travel times between a classroom and say a gym or a classroom in a dining hall were such that they actually had more time for teaching and learning. So Marilyn, I'm going to let you say a few more things about Pathfinder.
Great. Okay, if you want to show the next slide, it'll kind of show how this school is designed. It looks like it's just in like an S or 2 C's. They're kind of formed in houses, so to speak. So you might think of this as a school, but they're all 5-year-olds, so they're not divided by age or anything. A house system, and this allows them to stay together for the day for their learning within a certain area. So like Pam said, the transitions are far less than what you typically have in a school, and when you're trying to get 5-year-olds to line up and go somewhere, that's a feat to do. So this was a really savings. You can see how this learning suite is set up by this picture. There's some classroom spaces, but even within the classroom spaces, you can see that there's some different areas that are utilized a little differently. But then right outside of the classroom spaces, the area that's labeled C is actually another open commons area. And what they do there is they push in for lunch or push in for music or push in for art. So the kids are kind of right by their classroom and experiencing all those activities instead of lining up, going somewhere else to another classroom and lining up and coming back. So everything is very centralized.
So you can also see, the furniture allows for kids to wiggle, keep their kind of little brains working. It allows for different activities. It used to be, as architects, we would program schools by rooms, and more because of kind of this inquiry-based learning and the conversation about each student learns in a different way, there's much more focus on being able to have multiple activities that allow all students to be engaged. It doesn't mean that lecture is going away. It just means that there are choices, and the day in the life of a student and the day in the life of a teacher is changing. Look at these kids. Look how happy they are. That's what it's all about, right? So I know in walking through some of your schools, some of your art, some of your murals, you know, it is so representative of kind of the culture and context of each one of your individual schools. And so you can see here some of these travel studies that was part of the overall research that we did. Certainly go ahead.
Sorry,
Marilyn.
Pam, I was going to say, what teacher would not want more time with their students? We're always complaining as a former educator, we just don't have enough time. We just don't have enough. If that time is given back for education, that's just a wonderful addition at school.
And then certainly it was a little hard to see all the playgrounds under the snow, but outdoor learning is so important because we know at all ages, from little kids to high schoolers, that your focal length, your kind of attention changes, different parts of your brain get activated by being outside. So one of the things that we've definitely talked quite a bit about with Norwalk Public Schools is how do we make sure that, if you will, outdoor play, outdoor learning environments are incorporated. And that's not to say that you guys don't have some great ones. I've got to say, Jana, you have to help me, on the old Jefferson. All of a sudden you're on the 3rd floor and you walk out onto the playground. Oh my God, what a wonderful little place that is. So it's, you know, you have a lot of really wonderful places and spaces already. And then I would be remiss to not include the educator's experience. And Marilyn, maybe you can hop in here quickly.
Sure. This is a space that kind of takes place of the old teacher's lounge that we used to call it. Look at this wonderful inviting space that teachers can come collaborate, use as a planning center, work together, but there's also a little kitchenette linked to the outdoor space. So there's that nature connection, which is so important in our lives nowadays, especially, you know, since we can't get out as much, but this is really a great experience for our educators. And the educators said that one of the things they learned by having a space like this where they can all plan together, they've learned about each other, connected with each other better, and they were able to plan learning experiences for the students in ways that they never had before. So a great space for our educators.
Awesome. So moving along, so this is Las Brisas, which is a K-8, just outside of Phoenix. And I think it's a great example. It actually is a dual language performing arts magnet school. And you can see there was special attention to really making not an auditorium, but actually a little black box theater you can see in the lobby down below. It really feels like you're in a theater, right? And it is amazing when you walk in here and some of the things they're doing with both the performing and visual arts. And it's a school of choice. And so if you will, kids that are really, you know, want to be engaged in the arts and visual arts, as well as dual language, it's, you know, it's a wonderful facility. And I think I might have skipped one. Nope. So you can see the floor plan, relatively traditional in terms of how the rooms are laid out, but a real focus on making sure that the hallways feel lively and engaged. You can see where those spots of color cross over in the hallways. It does allow, and there's visual connections. It does allow for, if you will, breakout. And in this picture, none of the furniture had been installed yet, but you can see that there is an ability to really use that space, because I like to say the most expensive square foot of space in any school is really the one that isn't used. So here's one of the, if you will, maker spaces and project-based learning that's going on. So the next project is actually not a school, although it kind of is a school. The Create Center at the Arizona Science Center is actually places that is a place where families and kids can sign up. It's a maker space. You can be trained to work on the saws and the sewing machines and the laser printers and everything else. But it also actually is a regional professional development center for teachers in Arizona in terms of STEM and STEAM. So I think when one thinks about schools, there's also that conversation about where can teachers get together and, if you will, try out new things and share ideas in a collaborative way. So the next school is in Seattle, Washington, and is the Wainwright Intermediate School. And it's, as you can see, very, very northwest, and it's kind of located in the trees, very colorful. There's a lot of dark gray days in Seattle. So how do you create a joyous learning environment? And I've got to say, this is actually one of my favorite schools that we've done, because there's a scale to it that I think for middle school really makes those students feel special, nurtured. You can see here's a little learning stair. The media center where you break out is in the center of the floor plan. And then on the left, you can see there's kind of a combination of shared classrooms and open and closed classrooms, so that there's a lot of variety in terms of the style of teaching, so that even within the school, there are choices in terms of how you learn and what classes you take. So you can see behind that kind of little yellow wall up above is actually 2 classrooms that are co-taught. And so very, very transdisciplinary. And down below is what they call their Da Vinci room, where they have combined science and art. So, who doesn't want to be the next Da Vinci, right? And I think I'm going to turn this one over to Marilyn, because this is a really interesting middle school as well in Oklahoma that really has an environmental focus. And it is just opening.
It opened this year. We don't have real pictures of we're using these pre-open schools because COVID, we couldn't get in to take pictures, but they're open this year. So do you mind going back one slide, Pam? I want to just bring attention to the fact that this is actually over a small river or a stream. And so that bridge over the stream is actually, it captures both sides of the building, one that is a little bit more open for the community, which is the gym and the larger spaces like that. This space in the middle that goes at the bridge part is actually the library or media that also has breakout spaces for maker spaces. But they actually can use this space right below this as an outdoor classroom so that they could do a lot of science out here. And you can go ahead and go to the next slide. I wanted to share that. The superintendent said, this is a replacement school. The school that they were leaving was about 70 years old. And he said, I want this to be a catalyst for change. So that was their focus, was really making sure there was a transformative change in the environment, but also in the teaching and learning in this school. So the school you can see is not built but like a double-loaded corridor with the traditional classrooms, but it's a learning suite. And each of the areas have a commons area, each grade level. So there's a 6th grade area, 7th grade area, 8th grade area. Each has a commons area that really has a lot of space that the kids can break out into and do work that's outside of their classroom, but very transparent so teachers can also keep. this slide will show us that how the learning suite is kind of developed. You can see kind of the spaces of classrooms, but they're not really designed like classrooms. You can see how they can be really flexible if the walls would move or open up, or allows for connections between classrooms. You can see how teams can be set up, where teams can be grouped anyhow that the school would. Cross-curricular, it could be by department, however the schools would like to decide. They went with more cross-curricular because they were really encouraging cross-curricular learning in this environment. So you can see many, many different ways this could be set up. The collaboration, there's a lot of collaboration hubs so that there's spaces for students to come out and do work. There's a lot of projects going on in the school. All of them have connections to the outdoors, so they could see that. And then the administration and teacher planning areas. Teachers don't own a space. They have their own space to plan in. And then they go use the space that best meets their need for the learning at that time. So they have kind of a dispersed area as far as administration is, but the planning is all together. And then this also shows this big room, which is kind of designed for science, where they could do their big kickoff for science and then break off into their maker spaces for their labs. However, this is not just used for science. Like I said, the teachers don't necessarily own a space. So if ELA and math wanted to get together and do something big, they have a great space that they can accommodate that. So the space is very flexible and adaptable to the needs.
So the next space is Jefferson Terrace Academy, and it is also a K-8. And I'm going to go through this pretty quickly, but you can see it's a K-8 version of, if you will, those learning suites. And so when you think about it, it's not unlike the houses, if you will, in some of your middle schools. It's really about trying to create those places and spaces that students then have ownership of, and that they have that cohort that they're really comfortable with. But then certainly you can see all the furniture that is flexible and movable, allows you to wiggle and wobble, and therefore stay focused on the topic, because all that other, nervous energy is being expended in different ways. So moving to high school. Should I pause? Any questions, Linda? Any comments? Not yet. Okay, everyone's saving their comments for the breakout. So Canyon View High School is a high school that opened 2.5 years ago outside of Phoenix, Arizona, in the West Valley. And it was really set up to obviously be responsive to the Phoenix environment, but it was really about these different learning communities. And the district wanted to do very interdisciplinary learning, very transparent. At this school, not only do teachers not own classrooms, but they rotate classrooms every week because the environments are so different. And so they really start to model their lesson plans with the specific environments that they're located in. They also went through a lot of professional development and a lot of conversations really related to choice of students and how it's organized. And Marilyn could give you a day-long session about how this all came about, but we're only going to do 2 or 3 minutes. And well, Marilyn, I'll let you chime in, but I really want Jana to talk a little bit about some of the features. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the floor plans that are really kind of sustainability and resilient. And so a lot of lessons learned. So interestingly enough, their small learning communities are called forts, and some of our first collabs. One of in fact, he was a part of the planning team, and he ultimately became the opening principal. And he said, I remember when I was young and I used to take over my mom's living rooms with chairs and sheets, and my imagination just was allowed to go wild. And he said, you know, I don't always feel that way when I visit different schools. I want our schools to be like those forts that I built. And so all of a sudden, these were actually affectionately named forts. And so they're really, you can see in the little diagrams, they're movable walls. There's even an acoustical curtain that allows this to be configured in a lot of different ways. And so this was really driven by not the architects, but really the educational vision of this district. So I think a lot of times it's thought that architects should tell you what to do. And what we really want to find out is, what do you want and how can we support that vision? So you can see the different kinds of tables and chairs that move around that allow for group discussions. Obviously, in the maker spaces or science labs, it's, you know, a little more fixed. One has to do that, but still some ability for change. And then actually one of the favorite rooms in the upper left are these rooms that are kind of huddle rooms that have 3 to 5 students around them. And it's really interesting to hear English teachers talking about some of the classes that they've taught, almost like mystery classes where different teams are competing against each other. Also, in terms of really their public spaces, the superintendent wanted to make sure that the auditorium wasn't just a fixed auditorium that was used a couple times a year. And so you can see there's a seating dish in the lower right, movable kind of theater seats on bleachers, and then a really large lobby in the center that's called the White Box that really allows for, I think we mapped 76 different activities that the school district wanted to have take place in this place. So you can see a picture of the White Box, picture inside the Ada or theater, and then outside there actually was a large roll-up door that opened to the outside, because after all, this is Phoenix, and with a large learning stair that is really where a lot of the students gather outside. But I think at the end of the day, because Norwalk is not the same climate as Phoenix, it's the idea of having these kind of I-commons areas where students can gather and do different tasks together. I think the last piece, and I'm not allowing you, Jana, to speak very much, but you can see that this is really the space between the buildings and a lot of consciousness on low maintenance plants and trees that actually create a microclimate within, if you will, the hot, dry microclimate of Arizona. So Jana, do you want to add a little to this?
So I would love to. I think that one of the things that everybody needs to remember is that we always start first with the climate that we're dealing with. And obviously we got our fresh dose of snow. So when we actually go about designing a school for, you know, Norwalk, Connecticut, we will be looking at that climate the same as what we looked at here in, you know, Arizona. You'll notice there are overhangs that protect the building from the sun. In the Northeast, we actually don't mind a little sun as long as it's that sun in the winter, but yet we carefully still plan those overhangs so that they actually cut off the sun in the summer when we don't want that heat gain, because we have the best of both worlds. We have it very hot and we have it very, very cold. We looked at really healthy materials that didn't have, you know, chemicals that would, you know, cause you know, off-gassing and that sort of thing. And so we were very careful about in that selection and making sure we keep the air clean from the get-go, as well as then making sure that we designed like the surrounding landscape to capture the breezes. Because again, in Arizona, you want those breezes. And quite honestly, in the summer in Connecticut, you want those breezes so that you can have comfortable outdoor learning areas. We also looked at really, as she mentioned, simple systems, but we supported those simple systems with a really high performance envelope. And what that means is that the outside of the building is well insulated, and they allows the systems to be smaller and allows them to be more efficient. So again, we're really trying to be mindful of the place that we're in and designing a high performance building that is suitable for the climate.
Awesome. Thank you, Jana. And I don't want it to sound like we're just talking about new buildings, because these are just lessons learned. And so when you start to talk about, say, doing an outdoor playground, maybe outside an elementary school, really thinking about the orientation, the climate, how can you perhaps create an outdoor environment that makes it usable 95% of the time. So I would be remiss if I did not add that in. So how are we doing on time? So the last part is really 3 examples of CTE and kind of applied learning that are going on nationally. I think it's such an incredible time in terms of choice for students. You know, all of these facilities are really focused on, one, a student who says, I don't think I want to go to college, but I want to have a living wage. I want to be engaged. I want to have a lifetime of passion in doing something special. You know, then you have the student that knows what they want to do and say they want to go to Embry-Riddle. And I'll actually show you. In fact, my backdrop is a space at Cherry Creek. And he is taking the FAA 161 program and is going to Embry-Riddle so he can learn how to design airplanes. And then there's those students that are in between that say, I don't know what I want to do, but I think it'd be great to take some classes and pathways to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. So very quickly, Western Maricopa Educational Cooperative in Arizona, they have what's called a district overlay for CTE. And these are 3 of the campuses that we designed for WestMech. The central campus actually started with a focus on aviation and airframe. And so it was really a hangar building that really folks from here graduate and they can go right to work for Southwest Airlines. And so lots of choices. And then in terms of how and what they can do, you know, and take their passion for mechanics and airframes to the future. They've expanded their program and now includes welding, pre-engineering, and STEM. At the Northeast campus, it was an existing site. It was an electrical distribution center. So this can show you in terms of renovated spaces. A lot of what WestMech really focused on is that conversation of brand and how important in terms of these different pathways. These kids are so excited to be in these programs, to have internships, to be doing, be it auto mechanics, be it HVAC, be it veterinary, be it auto collision. They are proud of what they're doing. And, you know, research shows that it really helps them in all of their classes because they're really applying that learning to their day-to-day. At the Southwest campus, really pivotal to the campus was actually the energy and kind of nuclear center. Interestingly enough, the CEO of Palo Verde Nuclear Power Plant barely graduated from high school and went into the Navy and was on a sub. And really his passion became nuclear. And so as chairman of the board, he came to Greg Donovan, who was the superintendent, and said, I really need some additional people that can work through journeyman and on upward with maintaining the nuclear plant, because I'm not getting as many people from the Navy as I used to. And it's an amazing program, be it in nuclear reactors or gas and energy. And they now have developed additional really robust renewable tracks. And expanded their campus to include industrial technology, health sciences, cosmetology, and dental assistant, and some additional veterinary places. And you can see this building in the upper right-hand corner is actually net zero positive. How could you not do something like that at a campus that had a real focus on energy? So I thought it would be helpful or interesting to really talk about some of the amazing things that are happening nationally, to really engage students and really allow them, as I said, to develop those life skills. And last but not least, Cherry Creek Innovation Campus in 2015, as part of their graduation requirements, really focused on incorporating CTE as more of an innovation campus. And as part of that innovation campus, they really wanted to make sure that it started to really simulate work environments where different tracks and different pathways could be combined. So for instance, there's a student here that is taking certifications in automotive, culinary, and entrepreneurial because he wants his own fleet of food trucks, right? There's another young lady who basically is taking a combination of cosmetology, so manicures and pedicures with CNA, so that she can provide services to the elderly that are confined in their homes, particularly in COVID. So I think the interesting thing is when you start to really think about how buildings and spaces, not unlike what some of your P-TECH programs are doing now, it really starts to engage students and really allow them to kind of take off in their lifelong learning, if you will. So I think, so here's the different pathways that are at Cherry Creek. Some interesting components in terms of how they set up their 501c. They actually interviewed over 25 different businesses in order to select the right partners that they wanted. So it's kind of this overlap of architecture education and strategic planning and socioeconomic development within a place as special as Norwalk. So with that, I think that is long enough with me talking. And we should, I'm going to hand it over to Jana so Jana can give us, Missouri Innovation Campus. You know what? I think I may skip MIC because I think it's time to really talk about you all. And so in the breakout rooms, what we have is we have a series of images and words in both English and Spanish. And what we're going to be doing is asking a few questions. So Jana, do you want to take that away?
Sure. So Ralph has already put everyone into breakout rooms. And so when he hits the little button, we will all be sent into rooms. There will be a facilitator from our architectural team in each of the rooms. And again, I do want to say that we have people that are fluent in Spanish. So if people do still need some support or would like to have that conversation in Spanish, we have people in some of the rooms. Just let Ralph know and he will get you into those rooms, because I have to admit that I'm not one of those people. And so I kind of feel like I'm not very smart right now. But anyway, when we get over in there, we're going to look at photos as well as words. And you're going to do a little thumbs up if you see something you like, and where it's really just to facilitate conversation. And so that we get a feel for the kinds of things that you're looking for, or the kinds of things that you might not see currently that you'd like to see in the future, or, you know, things that just resonate with you. And again, you can, you know, say a thumbs up to a word, you can say thumbs up to an image. We've sort of paired the image, but you may see it completely differently. And if that's the case, then, you know, your facilitators will be taking notes as well and can write down your thoughts and put them into the mural. If you're familiar with the mural program, you'll know it's kind of like a whiteboard, and you can just ideate on there. And we will be able to share it later with the district. So, you know, if you didn't get something down today or you want to go back later and look at it, we can share it with the district, the link, and you can go back in and check it out at your leisure.
And Jana, let me add one more thing, because I think when I look at these pictures, when I look at these words, you have a lot of these kinds of spaces already in your district. So if you see something that reminds you of, that would be really great to know as well.
Yep, definitely identify your favorites if you've and let us know where they are in the district as well, so that those of us that have walked the district can make those connections.
Great, Janice. Yeah, I'll put everybody in the breakout rooms right now. And what time would you like to come back?
What time is it now? It's 6:10. So I'm thinking 30 minutes maximum. There is I'm assuming, Ralph, if this is the way breakouts normally work for me, people can come back early if they want to, but
Yes.
set the timer for 30 minutes so we automatically get pulled back at that time.
Sounds good, definitely. Yep, we will
Right.
we will make sure that. Thank you.
Ralph, how many do you have in a group on average?
I think I was able to break it down to 8.
Okay, there's some people that are still here, or are those people on the top not in a group?
So let me see who's left here.
I see Ed Torres, Pam.
Yeah, some people may have just jumped back in. I think they have to actually, yep, they're going. Kathy O will go, obviously English to Spanish, myself.
Some of the other ones I just admitted a few minutes ago. I don't know if you've got them in rooms, Ralph.
I thought I assigned everybody. I think everybody uses. Yeah, Colin didn't join his room yet, but he is assigned. Christina, same thing. Oops, hey, Carlene, I'm just going to place you into a group.
You're on mute, Ralph.
Hi, Solange. I'm going to assign you to a group. We're in breakouts right now.
Great, thank you.
Hello, Louisa. I'm just going to assign you to a group. We're in breakouts right now.
Ralph, when it's recording, is it also recording the breakouts or not?
No. So we're not recording the breakouts tonight. We are recording the interpretation of the whole piece and this room. Yes.
Okay.
So we're actually still live on live streaming right now.
No, I'm aware.
You have 3 new ones, Ralph.
Okay, got it. All right. So Denise, I'm going to put you into a small room for our breakout. Maria, I'm going to do the same thing for you.
Ralph, are you still there?
He was right here, Brenda. I looked down for a second and I don't know if he got kicked off by accident.
I don't know.
I don't possess the ability to move people into rooms.
Yeah, he was here and he just disappeared.
Okay. Hopefully he'll be back shortly. Is everyone else getting the dings every time someone comes in and out of the room? I don't know if it's being picked up because someone's not on mute or whether it's just coming through everybody's computer.
Coming through everybody's.
Okay.
For those of you who just joined us, we're in small group breakout rooms and we will put you into a room in 1 minute. Thank you for joining us.
There's Ralph.
There he is.
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to fix something for some other people.
Okay, we have three new folks here.
Let's see. Wendy, we're going to put you in a room right now. Okay, we'll do the same for you. Okay, Dro as well. Hey, Diana, I'm just going to move you to a room.
Ralph, do you see that Heidi's sitting here, I think, waiting, trying to get into her room also?
Oh.
No, I'm sorry. I was in a room.
Okay.
I don't want to be part of that. So should I just put it on pause and come back when the main meeting comes back?
Oh, you can just just put on mute and just wait for a few minutes till we write.
Okay, I thought it was more I thought it was going to be different than what it is. But you can send me back to the room and I'll just put it on mute.
Six one half dozen the other. So whatever you'd like to do. I will just turn off your camera though if you're just going to be here. So that's all. Thank you. Hey, Andre, I'm just going to assign you to a breakout room. Oops. Hello, Wilt S2A. I will be placing you in a breakout room in just a moment. Hi, Anselm. I'm just going to assign you to a room in just a second. And I'll now do the same for you. Hi, Jessica. I'm just going to move you to a breakout room for the next couple minutes. Oops. Hi, Drew. We're going to be coming out of breakouts in right about 3 minutes. So I can assign you to a room if you'd like to go in for the last couple minutes. Hi, Rady. We're about to come out of breakouts in less than 3 minutes. So I don't know if you'd want to just wait in the large room while we wait for everybody to come back. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Did everyone have fun?
Yeah.
We went totally off the script.
We needed
anyone
way
else?
more time, way more time.
Did
Did
anyone
another 2
else
hours?
do
Surprise
that?
me. That does not surprise me.
We hardly got started.
So Jana, how many groups?
So Ralph, how many groups? I believe there were 8. I believe that's what he said to me before we went out, is that there were 8.
There were 8 groups, yes, with about 7 to 8 people in each group.
Awesome. So we have about 50. Let's see, we've got, if I do the math fast enough, we've got 18 minutes. So let's see, 18 divided by 8.
2 minutes a pop.
2 minutes a group. And so should we just go through each one of the thumbs up, thumbs down, and some of the comments?
So do you want to just do it verbally, or do you want me to share the screen?
I think, what do you guys think? Share the screen or
Share
just
the screen.
verbally? Share the screen?
We need the vision.
All right, I'm going to share my screen. And then I'm going to pull out so that you can see. We'll go into the first one here, which was Linda and Pam, who went off script, which again, that does not surprise me at all. So what would you like to talk about, Pam, or who's going to represent you?
Is someone from our group want to talk about what our conversation? Donadella?
Donadella, Anthony.
Sure. If you'd like to get us started.
Donalda. I said that wrong. I'm so sorry.
It's
Donalda.
totally fine. You'd be the 1 millionth person. All good. I'll respond to literally anything. We had a lot of thoughts, and one of the pieces that we discussed last that was really a huge priority in thinking about our values here was how will students transition to a post-COVID world in schools, which is a really important question the facilitators asked. And so as attractive as all of these options were, prioritizing making sure that our classrooms are integrated and flexible for collaboration, making sure that kids have access to one another, the teacher, and to optimize the space in terms of the instructional goals we have for them. That the spaces affirm the dignity of kids and are inviting. We had a little bit of mixed opinions about transparency. In that, would it cause distraction? And if so, or would it be revolutionary? Opinions in our group were divided. One of the last pieces that we discussed was space for collaboration, but also the consideration that about half of our kids are introverts. And what does it mean for them to have quiet spaces or private spaces that they need to thrive and do their best work in a context of schooling where we really have a strong bias towards the extrovert child and constant talking, communication, group work. How can we balance the needs of all our students, particularly the ones that are going to be a little anxious coming back into group settings? So this is a challenging activity for a time that is really in flux and complicated. So Anthony, do you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think the overall theme to the thing was that these spaces look a lot better than what were, the older spaces that we're looking at now. So any move in these directions is just pretty good. We thought that the more lighting was good, where you're looking at the, I can't really see it because it's a little far away, but yeah, the inviting section here, and then the fact that Brian McMahon has a learning common area, which is good. So we've already made some progress there. But and the overall theme was, I think somebody said this in our group, that these buildings, these designs look more like what's going on in the classroom rather than right now a lot of the schools are dark and closed and have older furniture that's not flexible. So we thought flexibility was good. We thought that that the transparency, there was, like we said, as long as it's not done in a way where kids are peeking through windows and trying to see each other as they're walking by, it could work. You just have to be careful about it.
Awesome. Group 2?
I will report out for group 2. We actually had a very similar conversation. One of our big ahas was the need for balance. We need both active, collaborative spaces, but we also need quiet, focused spaces. And part of our discussion centered around students who have special needs, who qualify for special education, who may have ADHD, who may have other disabilities that, you know, we need to balance. So we need an environment that is accessible and safe for everyone. That's kind of trying to get that within a single building. The other big takeaway we came up with was, you know, the need to really address space for adults. So staff meeting, you know, staff meetings, but also, you know, anytime we invite somebody in from the outside, do we have a dedicated or a flexible space that can hold everybody we need to hold at the meetings? How we're integrating tech and the people who provide tech services for us. Do we have a space for them that's not a closet?
Awesome. That was
Good job,
great.
Julie.
Good job, Julie. Group 3. Whoops.
Group 3. Dr. Lewis, do you want to talk this through? I know your name, so that's why you're getting picked on.
Sure. Our discussions, you know, sounded a lot like our previous 2 groups. One particular idea that we all honed in on was the flexible part. We talked about, you know, the ability of a classroom to transform from a classroom to a breakout room to a small group, a room for small group instruction within the drop of a dime. We also looked at that flexibility with teachers using that as prep space, students using it as collaborative space as well. I think I talked about another tile there about collaboration. We also talked about, again, and Julie talked about that balance between having a small focused learning spot, but also having the privacy where you can go and, you know, read a chapter of a book and maybe report out or work with a peer in that space. We also talked about presence and how with these new buildings and all the modern technology that's, you know, inside of them and surrounding them, that when you come down a driveway or you drive past a school, you want to know what that's the school that I want to go to, just based on how it stands in the community and how it represents the teachers, the students, and the entire learning community. Did I miss anything, Tom, or anyone in group 3?
We did talk about inviting as well as diversity. Vivian brought that diversity up and how we need to make sure that we're being very mindful of that.
Right, and sustainability was also brought up as an important criteria that we need to build into, you know, our buildings going forward. So
Awesome. Group 4, we're staying on schedule here, Jana. Can you believe it? There may even be 1 minute for a wrap up.
So who's from group 4? Carolina, if they don't volunteer, you can call them out.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm more than happy to. So okay. So let's see. I think Allison, if she's still here, she has some really great input.
Where's Allison? Where'd you go, Allison? I don't know. She's being quiet. Is there somebody else?
Yeah, let me see who else is still here.
Yeah, I think people have multiple meetings, and so they may be coming up against a hard stop.
Yeah. I can speak on behalf of my team.
Awesome. Thanks, Carolina.
Go for it.
So yeah, we had a really, really great conversation. And it was really interesting. We had similar thoughts with security and transparency, like, you know, how do we balance those things? We, for the most part, like the idea of the open floor plan, but there were also thoughts about like students learning differently and providing like different types of spaces for maybe a more quiet setting. And so we really love this photo here of the student here in the window nook. we also had an interesting conversation. So one of my team members was she's the previous teacher, and she was saying she didn't love the learning stare. In her case, she finds that in her school, it just meant for like students to kind of just hang out, and it didn't really work as well as a lecture space. So that was interesting. And then she mentioned that it's kind of like a wasted space when space is a premium. So that was interesting. We really love the idea of diversity, again here, transparency, access. We discussed that the library can be used as a place for access. So that was interesting. Let's see what else. Yeah, we also like the idea of sustainability, and yeah, also like the flexible learning spaces was something that we discussed as well.
All right. Thanks, Carolina. Group 5.
Sarah.
Hey, I think, is anyone from my group still around? Maybe Sharu?
All these quiet
I'm
people.
still here.
All
Hi,
right.
do you want to talk about some of the things we said in our group?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
We talked about, going with the first one, integrated. We like it, but we talked about how variety is needed because different students have different learning needs and learning styles. So variety of spaces is very important. We need special spaces or spaces for specialty instruction, quiet spaces, but not enclosed. So quiet should not mean enclosed. One parent whose kids go to Tracy said Tracy probably has a similar space. They don't know yet because due to COVID, they haven't been able to go to the school. I can't see that tiny note. Inviting spaces for on the left.
On the left, let me
For
zoom in.
story time. Is that story time?
I'm not sure which
Top.
there we go. There it is. Tracy.
Comfortable. Yeah,
Comfortable.
so for comfortable. So I think for comfortable is what the parents at Tracy School has a similar space. Diversity, a few of us felt that the first picture immediately to the right of the label does not really speak to us about diversity. The second picture, it does. If you could please scroll down. Transparency, we had concerns about safety and distraction for transparent spaces. For focused, we really liked it. The picture with the focused label, it has variety of spaces, caters to people who have different styles of learning, focusing, right? Some may need a corner to sit in and focus, while others may like sitting in front of a window. So we really liked this space. Could you please scroll to the right and then up? Thank you. Sustainable, one good point that was raised was this brought to the mind a question: will our buildings or schools look the same in the future as they looked in our past? And is the design going to be flexible to accommodate any like COVID style situations? All these spaces look like they are designed for gathering of people. But if we get into another situation like COVID, or if this situation extends, will we be able to use these spaces?
Great points. So I think we should, unfortunately, I'm sure we could all talk another hour, but I think we better move to group 6.
I had a Heidi and Diana. Anyone else still? Or Heidi, if you want to speak, if you're still there, I can pick on you. Anyone?
Go for it.
Okay, I have quiet ones. I'll share. I think our biggest thing here was that it was not okay to have to pick one thing and that every single thing that we're looking at should be a priority in any school environment. That all spaces should be fun. Safety isn't even on here, but it should be something that is an umbrella thing across things. We had a discussion about quiet and how we need to clarify that quiet in this instance doesn't mean that we're saying that instructional spaces across the board in any way should be quiet, and that there should be pockets of it, but we're not saying all instructional spaces should be quiet. Having diversity of lots of types of appropriate spaces is important, having connectivity, but really there was a little bit of consensus around flexibility being absolutely key. I heard a couple of suggestions that for enrollment issues and growth issues that I am assuming have been seen here, that it's just very valuable to have spaces that you can use at any given time for multiple purposes, and that is key. And then sustainability, I really liked what was said about that, if you'll go to the comment, because she put it beautifully and said that it should be a priority for all new designs and innovations, because it level sets that everyone and everything is part of a bigger picture and that the environment is part of their learning experience and beyond just in their campus, but also in their community. So
awesome.
That was powerful.
Very nice.
What a great thought to move on to the next group with.
So let's see, I believe that's Stephen.
Oh, there's no group 7? Well,
Not
does anybody
tonight.
from group 8 want to volunteer to report what we talked about?
Go for it. We got like 1 minute left and we've got, I believe, is this the last group or we got one more group?
Still me.
Still Rachel's group. So we have one more group. So go for it.
Dr. Costanzo, do you want to take a stab at this?
Yeah, happy to. So a lot of what we spoke about has been covered. We spoke about a number of different things that we think would be beneficial as we think about new spaces in the district. Large spaces that are flexible and allow for different types of learning to take place would be preferable. Flexible seating, flexible furniture, always positive. We talked a lot about how important natural light is and looked at one image in particular where the school was laid out in small buildings that were connected and formed a large outdoor closed-in space that really was an interesting view at what possible new schools could look like, where you maximize outside space and students benefit from that short amount of time just being outside and crossing a courtyard, a large courtyard to another location. The group also talked about the need to really think about security and how we lay these spaces out so that they're safe in the post-Sandy Hook environment. I think that more or less covers it. I'm sure there were some other things, but I know we're running short on time.
So Rachel, I think your group is the final group.
I was really nice and I told them that I would talk for us.
Go for it.
So we talked about a lot of the same things that the other groups did. So I was going to focus on something that I'm not sure if anybody else focused in on, but we talked a lot about diversity and how, and honestly, all of these, but we mostly focused on diversity. We talked about how can you actually design a space that supports diversity? And we talked, so that led us to an in-depth conversation of the design process and how we engage and how we do things like this, but also how you can create spaces that lead to the outcomes that you want in terms of interpersonal relationships. And so we talked about Joel's immediate reaction was like, oh, you mean like build an expensive school in a poor neighborhood? And it's like, that's not what we need. That's not helpful to our communities. And so we had a really nice conversation focusing on that. But then of course, all of the things everybody else is talking about balancing safety and transparency, and also balancing safety and connection to natural spaces. And again and again, we came back to how important it was to have flexibility and to spread out lots of different spaces for all the different ways that students learn. Does anybody want to jump onto that? Joel, are you still on? You wanna make a statement? Yeah.
Hi. I just wanted to say that I think that all of these breakout sessions were really quite moving and incredible in its own kind of way. It is great to listen to like-minded people, as well as people that have different views and thoughts on all of this. I think it's very important as you're moving forward and as the community is moving forward, to incorporate as much as possible all of these design elements that actually create the identity, not only of the school, but also of the community, and also of all the other schools that are involved with this process. I just wanted to thank you all for allowing this to happen, this breakout session and this whole talk. Thank you.
So I think with that, I'm going to hand it back over to, I can't see, is Dr. Australia still on? Or Dr. Costanza to wrap us up.
So I'm going to allow Dr. Costanza to wrap up, because I know this is his project. And I just want to thank all of you for engaging in this work with the community, and thank the community for bringing so much insight into this conversation that is going to be really important for us in understanding what the community wants, what the community envisions for the future of Norwalk when it comes to the perspective of facilities, and how facilities will inform the environment that we want to create for the learning experiences that our students will have. But I just want to thank Dr. Costanzo for the amazing work that he's done in collaboration with your team, and allow him to have the closing remarks.
Okay, well, I appreciate that, Dr. Estrella, and you've said it well. This is really a community opportunity to think about the way school could be different in Norwalk, and one of the key ways you do that is through the learning conditions and the learning environment. And the conversation we had tonight, and the conversations we've been having with staff, and we will with students, to think about learning spaces and what that could look like in the future, and how we can make it about us, is really quite an amazing thing to be able to do together with all of you. So thank you for committing your time to Norwalk tonight, and thank you to Newman Architects and DLR Group. Really, we're super impressed with everything that you've been doing throughout this process. And everybody have a great night.
Good evening, everyone.
Night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.